And in the part 1 finale, the Byrdes get ready to deliver Omar to the FBI. Ruth also gets ready to leave with Wyatt. But Wyatt has to tell Ruth that he actually proposed to Darlene. He says he did it because of baby Zeke. If there's not a father in his life, child services is going to take him. So Ruth yells at him, then take the baby. I'll go get the baby. But she just killed the head of the Kansas City mob. Do you not think they're going to answer that? Wyatt then tells Ruth that he actually never wanted to leave, and he loves Darlene. This sparks a pretty big argument between the two, but Wyatt is dead set on staying. So as Ruth is holding back tears, she just asks, can I at least come to the wedding? Wyatt, however, doesn't answer, just getting in his truck and leaving. Even though Ruth might not be invited to the wedding, she needs to make sure a wedding takes place, that there's two people breathing. So after Wyatt leaves, she heads up to Kansas City and meets with Frank Jr. and tells him, hey, you can't kill Darlene. She's marrying my cousin. Here's a payoff. At first, Frank Jr. is a little pissed off, but he takes the money and promises Ruth that he will not lay a hand on her cousin or Darlene. As that meeting was going on, so was the meeting between the Byrdes, the FBI, and Omar Navarro. Jim is also there, acting as an attorney for Omar. He's laying out the deal that Omar is going to give the FBI. In a nutshell, he gives up the cartel along with Javi, and he gets his wish. He's going to be able to walk freely between the United States and Mexico. But the head of the FBI who's there just stops Jim and says, we had time to think about the deal and the plans changed. We would prefer that Omar stay in charge of the Navarro cartel for 5 years. Omar continues to help the FBI, and after 5 years, he has immunity. This doesn't only piss off Omar and the Byrdes, it also pisses off Maya. She pulls her superior aside and says, what the hell are we doing? We have the head of the cartel, the guy that we've been after for years, and we're not going to take down this cartel. Instead, we're actually going to keep him involved so we can cash in? All the superior has to say to Maya is, know your place. Well, Maya is definitely pissed off about this. She feels like the FBI is choosing the cash grab that they get when they take down a seizure as compared to actually taking down a cartel. And it's not like Omar is any more happy about the situation. By renegotiating this deal, they're basically asking Omar to go back to Mexico and kill his nephew because he's not going to survive 5 years in Mexico with Javi breathing down his neck. They do try to negotiate with the FBI, but it doesn't work. Eventually, Omar just caves and says, okay, you've got me for 5 years. After Omar agrees to the relationship that the FBI has proposed, they also let the Byrdes know that they're no longer needed. The FBI is going to assume their role in the Navarro cartel. So this looks like it's it. Looks like this is where the two parties part ways for good, and it also looks like this is where the Byrdes finally get out. Before Omar says goodbye to Wendy, though, he does let her know that if she ever wants to have sex with a former cartel leader turned FBI insider, she knows where to find him. He then gets ready to head home. The problem is when he gets to the airport and he's just feet away from boarding his private plane, the FBI swoops in and arrests him. And it's not really their doing. It was a rogue mission by Maya. She couldn't let the drug kingpin fly back and continue to do business as usual, even if he's working for the FBI. Her moral compass wouldn't allow it. She also knew that by doing this, it would make national news, and the FBI couldn't exactly just let him go. So Maya single-handedly screwed up this deal for Omar, the Byrdes, the FBI, but it also put the Byrdes' lives in jeopardy because they have no idea what's racing through Omar's brain. As soon as the news hits, they tell Charlotte to go grab Jonah and go to the hiding spot, which is Buddy's mausoleum. In turn, they go try to smooth this whole situation over with the FBI. They offer up switching Javi for Omar. Takes a little bit of convincing, but the FBI seems open to the idea. Now they just have to get Javi on board. And maybe, unfortunately for them, Javi is actually in the area. He had noticed that Shaw Medical's quarterly projections had hit, and he was wondering how exactly they did that without his product. So he called up Claire, and she had to admit that because he shut off production to her, she had to go to another route, which was through Darlene Snell's heroin. But that was small potatoes compared to what happened to his uncle. When Marty initially makes the phone call, Javi starts bragging to him about how he's going to be the one to kill him. Marty tells Javi that they can actually turn this into a good thing for him. He just needs a little bit of time, and Javi gives him 90 minutes. But Marty doesn't exactly know what he's going to do. That's when he gets a phone call from Jim telling him that he needs him to come to his house right away to sign some papers to make this thing ironclad. Marty tries to tell him it's not a good time, but Jim tells him that if he doesn't get to his house right away, he's going to start making some phone calls that make Marty's life very difficult. Doesn't really give Marty an option. And when Marty gets to Jim's, he realizes why Jim was so insistent. It's because Jim was being held at gunpoint by Javi. He knocks Marty down, and Marty starts begging to explain. He tells Javi, I can guarantee you a deal with the U.S. government. You can run the whole cartel with absolute freedom. It's exactly what your uncle's doing, and the FBI wants to make a deal with you. Javi, though, doesn't believe him. And right as he's about to kill him, he gets a phone call from Omar. If you were wondering where Wendy was in all of this, she was in the prison talking to Omar. The FBI allowed her to smuggle in a cell phone as she tried to convince Omar that him being arrested wasn't their doing and it wasn't the FBI's doing, it was Maya. She tries to convince Omar that if he were to convince Javi to take the same deal that he took, they're going to get Javi in a room and arrest him, extraditing Omar back to Mexico. He could walk free that day. It literally takes Wendy swearing on her kids' lives for Omar to make the phone call, and he does. Wendy then thanks him and says we'll set up the meeting between the FBI and Javi. Omar then stands up and tells her, I'm out of this place in 48 hours or Nelson has strict orders to end you. So you better not be screwing with me. But because Omar made the phone call, Marty's life is spared for one more day. That night he goes to Ruth's and says, I need you to swing by the house in the morning. And if I'm not there or Wendy's not there, I need you to take Jonah and Charlotte, take the money, and get out of town. I'm dealing with a very erratic guy right now. It's not Navarro, it's his nephew. Ruth says yes, and Marty goes home. In the morning, two members of the Navarro cartel come and pick Marty up. They take him to Javi, but Javi tells them, I'm not going to that mall. And the meeting this time is going to be at the funeral home. The FBI gives Javi the same exact deal they gave Omar, and Javi agrees to it. After the agreement, everybody goes their separate ways. The Byrdes, though, go to the prison where Omar is being kept. They've put some contingency plans in place just in case anything happens to him. They tell Omar that if anything happens to them, his children lose access to the money that they put aside for him. They also tell Omar that Javi is completely unaware that Omar gave him and the entire cartel up to the FBI. They did this to make sure that Omar isn't punished by Javi. Marty says, God forbid anything happen to your kids. And Omar nods but says, you didn't have to put your kids in a tomb today. With a shotgun? I don't kill kids. It does freak the Byrdes out a little bit to know that even though he's in prison, Omar was aware of the fact of exactly where Jonah and Charlotte were. But Jonah and Charlotte are in that tomb and they are safe. They fought for a little bit about the Ben situation and about how Charlotte reminds Jonah of their mom. But then they start talking about what they're going to do if their parents end up dying. Charlotte tells Jonah, we'll go to the Pacific Northwest or something. Get new identities, get an apartment, but don't worry, we're going to be safe. And you just kind of get the feeling she's going to regret those comments. But for the meantime, she's right, they are safe. They end up getting the phone call from Marty and Wendy telling them it's safe to leave, and they do. But even after all of this, Jonah is still planning on going back to Lazy O. That's pretty surprising to Charlotte. She tries to convince him to come back home, but he says, I'll stop by in the morning, but that's because I have to pick up the rest of my stuff. When Charlotte gets home, Wendy asks, where's Jonah? And she has to tell her parents he went back to the motel. This wasn't just a big day for the Byrdes. It was also a big day for Wyatt and Darlene because they got married. Beautiful ceremony. No, I'm kidding. It was gross. But it was a ceremony that Ruth wasn't at, even though she wanted to be there. The next day, early in the morning, Wendy gets a phone call from Claire Shaw. She informs Claire on exactly what is going on with the Navarro cartel, the heroin, Omar, Javi, all of it. And unfortunately for Claire, she's going to have to meet with Javi one last time, but Wendy promises, after this meeting, you're never going to have to meet with him again. Claire reluctantly agrees. As soon as Wendy gets off the phone, they hear the door open and Jonah walks in. And it's like Wendy has finally realized that she might have actually lost Jonah forever. She nicely says, I'm happy you're here. I was going to call you. But he sternly says, I wouldn't have picked up. I'm just here getting the rest of my things. After he picks up his stuff, he's planning on going back to the Lazy O. And the Lazy O is where Mel is staying. As Jonah's picking up his things, Mel is making a phone call to Maya. She's a little freaked out that he found her phone, but he explains, I'm a private investigator. It's kind of my job. Anyway, I saw you on the news, and I'm a big fan. I'm looking into Marty and Wendy Byrde. You have no idea how the rest of the conversation goes, but you definitely get the impression that Maya, who doesn't exactly have a lot of fans right now in the FBI or out in the world, is intrigued by this phone call with Mel. And while Mel is making that phone call, Darlene and Wyatt get back to the farm for the first time since they've been married, but they have a visitor. It's Javi. He's finally going to take care of Darlene because nobody else was. And for the first time, you actually see Darlene Snell scared. He has both Wyatt and Darlene sit down, and he explains to them that they asked them to stop selling heroin, but they wouldn't listen. And then he proceeds to shoot both Darlene and Wyatt right in the head, killing them. Ruth was right. Being associated with Darlene cost Wyatt his life. A little while later, Ruth ends up showing up at the farm to give them a wedding gift, but she doesn't end up giving them that gift. She just finds their dead bodies. She grabs baby Zeke and gets the hell out of there. She's in complete shock. She calls up Frank Jr. thinking that it was him and starts reaming him out, saying, "You promised. You said that you weren't going to touch them." And Frank says, "Oh, I have no idea what you're talking about. I didn't kill anybody." Ruth does not believe him one bit, but he once again says, "Ruth, I didn't do it. I swear to God." And that's when Ruth has a pretty good idea of maybe who did kill him. She heads straight to the Byrdes' house. She barges in, yelling at Marty, "All right, where is he? Where's Navarro's nephew?" Marty and Wendy have no idea why she's this hysterical, and they ask what's going on, and she says, "They killed Wyatt. He's dead. And I know that you know who did this, so you tell me who he is, and you tell me where he is." Marty plays dumb, and Ruth is not having it. She cocks the shotgun and is yelling at him, "You're a liar, and I'm going to kill you if you don't tell me." And it doesn't look like she's really joking about it. Wendy tries to calm down the situation by saying, "We don't know anyone who would want to kill Wyatt. I mean, maybe the Casey mob?" But Ruth says this wasn't the mob. They killed Wyatt and they killed Darlene too. "You know anybody else who might want to kill her?" And then she says some words that are not suitable for advertisers, so I'm not going to repeat them. But she's extremely emotional at this point. The Byrdes continue to try to play dumb until Jonah comes upstairs and says, "I'll tell you his name." And Wendy tries to tell him, "No, you're not." But Jonah's not listening. He tells Ruth, the guy who killed Wyatt and Darlene is named Javi Elizondo. Wendy pulls Ruth aside and says, "Okay, that man works for the FBI, and he runs a drug cartel." Marty then says, "Ruth, do not hurt this man." And Ruth cuts him off and says, "Or what? Your whole family's going to be murdered? If you want to stop me, you're going to have to kill me." And obviously, Ruth killing Javi would really screw up the Byrdes' deal with the FBI and Navarro. Ruth then storms out of there, gets in her truck, and drives off to find Javi. And that is how part 1 of season 4 of Ozark ends. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Consider subscribing to the channel. If you liked it, hit that thumbs down button. If you thought it sucked, smash that thumbs down button. Be nice in the comments section. If I don't get back to you in the comments section, it's because I avoid it. It's usually a plague of negativity and suck. Plus, nasty comments bother me. There'll be 100 nice comments, but that one that tells me I suck, it just sits with me, so I just avoid it. But if you needed this recap, chances are somebody else needed it, so consider sharing to your social media platforms. Once again, I really appreciate it. Thanks.